Kia ora and welcome to the Wiggly Nishcast. I am the Diggity Doo Da Doc, aka the South Auckland Doosra Deliverer. And we are here as the Nishcast, myself and the Wildcard, to talk some cricketing matters. Today we have Plunket Shield just started up again after the white ball takeover of the peak summer season that sees the Plunket Shield start the summer, end the summer, much like Test cricket, which actually, when you think about it, kind of seems somewhat sensible. But there's far more scheduling shenanigan antics from New Zealand cricket than stuff like that. And then we have the Blackcaps playing a bit of Test cricket wildcard. But before we get onto that, I'm going to stay on topic with the introductory idea to lead us into Blackcaps and Plunket Shield discussion. And I've got this idea in my head, having just written about the White Ferns being the biggest issue in Kiwi sports right now. And I wrote about it, and when I'm writing about it, I feel really in the zone. I feel, the blood boiling, frustration brewing. Everything's just coming to a boiling point in my body. And then I write it, and now I'm lacking a bit of energy just because I got it all out of my system wildcard. So I just want to know, firstly, how are you? And secondly, if you agree or disagree or seek further information on the Aotearoa's White Ferns, the women's cricketers, being the biggest issue in Kiwi sports right now.
Well, Doc, you've laid a rather nice platform there. I'm not sure exactly how to attack this one. Let's say, well, first of all, I suppose I got to admit that, yeah, I'm doing alright. A little bit lacking in sleep today as things happen, but, so it goes. White Ferns' biggest issue in New Zealand. Do you say all New Zealand sports? I mean, well, let me think about that one. We had that whole beat up about the hockey thing recently. The All Whites decided they didn't want to play some friendly games because they weren't. Well, fair enough. They weren't ideal preparation in terms of the timing of everything. What else have we got? Well, the All Blacks are going to need a new coach soon, but no, the White Ferns, I think, are a pretty... Not only is that a big deal and a big issue, the fact that they just haven't really been performing for at least 6 months now, at least going back to the 2020 World Cup, where they were pretty shocking. I would suggest it's also a big deal that doesn't seem to be getting the attention for being such a big deal that it actually is.
You bang on the money there, Wildcard, because all we're told is that we're making great strides in terms of women's cricket and women's sport being put on an equal pedestal to the men. The odd game is shown on TV, which is amazing. They are contracted cricketers, which is amazing, but both instances are not good enough. And now we are seeing, it's one thing for me as a enlightened male to want greater equality and to believe that they should be getting more, but then now we are seeing the lack of those resources, the lack of support, the lack of structure around women's cricket in Aotearoa actually having a genuine impact on the performances and how they go against the likes of India, England and Australia, who are pouring a whole lot of resource and energy into women's cricket. And the dwindling performances of the White Ferns has come as women's cricket goes from strength to strength. Internationally, women's cricket is on the rise and all the minnow teams are getting a whole lot better. You've got the Women's Big Bash League going from strength to strength. You've got the Women's Super League, I think it is, in England, also going, neck level. India are an absolute dominant force in women's cricket now. And this is because all those nations are pouring relative resource into their teams, so they got a whole lot more money, they got a whole lot more energy that they can put into women's cricket. And all these minor moves that New Zealand cricket are making are not keeping up with that trend. So everyone else is moving forward very quickly, and New Zealand cricket is moving forward at a very slow pace. And now we are seeing the direct result of that shown in how the White Ferns are performing. They lost the Rose Bowl. There's still one ODI to go. They lost that 2-0. They got absolutely torched, I think, in 2 ODIs to India. I think they did win the third one. Dead rubber, no point. Who cares about that one? There was a terrible World T20 campaign. Before that, they got smoked by England midway through last year. It's just all coming out. And then you had this Peter McGlashan kind of tweeting situation where he was saying that the domestic cricketers get, pretty much peanuts to play women's cricket domestically in Aotearoa, and that because they are not deemed as professional cricketers, they have no access to the Players Association. So they basically have no rights. They have no representation, which is equally as terrible. So basically we have the situation where women's cricketers in Aotearoa are treated as far... What's the opposite of superior? Inferior.
That's the one.
They're treated as super inferior to the men's cricketers, but the PR line, the hype, the publicity is that New Zealand cricket is making great moves forward for women's cricket, which is simply not true.
Yeah, and that whole thing about them being on TV a lot more, I think that's completely conflated the whole thing about the actual progress they're making. Just because they're more visible doesn't mean that they're getting the benefit of those more resources. I mean, it obviously helps to be visible. It's given, younger fans something to aspire to and all that. Given older fans something to watch, something to enjoy, and something to take seriously. And it's funny how that works. We're out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But even in sight, it's still, it does kind of feel like the hype outweighs the actual progress. And I wonder on a few different things based on what you say. One of them is because India, England, and Australia are obviously the 3 countries that make the most money from cricket, just in general, and that's India first, India second, India third, and then Australia and England third, fourth, and fifth. Do you see similar trends from other countries, like even countries that are bigger than New Zealand but on a lower scale? Like, is South Africa, West Indies, the countries like that having a similar sort of not halt, but just not the rise that perhaps others are experiencing, or is this just a New Zealand thing?
I think New Zealand would still beat South Africa, Pakistan more often than not. The West Indies are pretty damn good themselves, especially they only play white ball cricket. They're pretty damn good at T20 cricket, and they can upset anyone in ODI cricket as well. So West Indies are probably better than Aotearoa, and they continue to get better. That's the whole point, is that the White Ferns were once competitive. Maybe 18 months ago, they were genuinely competitive with Australia, England, and India. Now they are competitive against South Africa and Pakistan, and probably going to win those games in Aotearoa, but perhaps in foreign conditions they will struggle.
Sounds a lot like the Blackcaps.
Yeah, and it's a case of, I think, across the board, women's cricket is rising, primarily because, like, if you're a South African international, you can still go play Super Blast cricket, you can play women's Big Bash cricket, same with the West Indies. So the rise of women's cricket is carrying those smaller nations up. So it's not just a case about money, it's a case of the opportunities and the ability to have a actual full-time job from playing cricket, regardless of how much money your home governing body has. And then at the lower levels, for me, this is most evident in the players who are coming into the White Ferns. So the younger players, I don't want to mention too many names, but I have to as examples, like Maddie Green, Holly Huddleston, have been in the White Ferns for a couple of years now as consistent members, but they just couldn't perform. They couldn't do the job. They go back to domestic cricket and they do all right. Then they come White Ferns and they're reasonably average. Lauren Down was one of the top 5 run scorers in, I think she was second, in the 50 over competition in Aotearoa. She's played 8 ODIs now over the summer and she's averaging 8.
Not ideal.
In international cricket. So the jump between domestic cricket and international cricket is huge, probably because those domestic cricketers in Aotearoa are nowhere near as semi-pro as they should be if, like, this is the issue. It's one thing to say that New Zealand cricket doesn't have the money or the resources of the other countries, but the thing is New Zealand cricket portrays as if they are making efforts towards greater opportunity, greater investment in women's cricket. So what is actually happening and what is being said to happen do not align. There's an illusion there, and that's the issue. If New Zealand cricket came out and said, look, we just don't have the money, we don't have the ability to invest in women's cricket, okay, we have to accept that. It's kind of shitty, and I'm sure some of the Blackcaps might take a little less money to support women's cricket. That would be okay-ish. But New Zealand cricket are saying the opposite. They're saying we're making moves, we're making great strides. Yeah, we're on TV now. Well, there's no point being on TV if you suck.
Yeah, no one's really going to sit there all day watching the team lose by 150 runs. Tell you what this really reminds me of is the situation that we got with women's football in New Zealand as well, which is a very similar thing in that there's a growing and of an increasing standard, the National League, the National Women's League, but it's still to where just the level of investment that you're starting to see, just over the last 5 years in women's football in America's always been pretty good, but America, at least in the last sort of 5 years, has really stabilized their national competition to where it's one of the 2 or 3 very best in the world. By the way, number 1 defender in that league is a certain Abby Erceg. But European teams, especially European countries, European clubs, you've seen, like Manchester United just started their women's team. It was about 5 years too late, by the way, but set up a women's team this season in their inaugural one. Juventus the year before. These kind of clubs are really starting to take this seriously. Manchester City are absolutely brilliant with the way they integrate their male and female first teams and the level of excellence that they're getting from both of them as well. This is like the money is not where it probably should be, and it's certainly not where it will end up, but it is on that sort of like rise to where it's getting there, and there's a lot more advertising interest, there's a lot more television and broadcast interest in these things. And so while the New Zealand domestic stuff is certainly getting better and better and better, and there are better quality players coming through, at least more better quality players rather than just the good ones are the outliers, it's still at a case where this is very much an amateur competition, and these players are, this league is not developing at the level that professional leagues in Europe are, not even close. Like, it's getting absolutely dwarfed. But at the same time, those growing leagues in Europe are offering more opportunities for New Zealand players to where a few World Cups ago, New Zealand gets to basically go to every World Cup because we qualify out of Oceania, and all the problems that we can say New Zealand face by being an isolated country without a whole lot of money in football. Well, it's still going to be better than Tahiti or the Solomon Islands. So get to go to basically every World Cup. A few World Cups ago, you're looking at a squad where maybe 5 players, maybe 20% of the players were playing professionally. Now, they're coming up at the World Cup soon. That should be 80%. And the ones who aren't there are probably going to be players, under the age of maybe 23 who will probably play professionally at some point in the future, or a couple of more experienced players who have come back to New Zealand having played professionally, Sarah Gregorius, Anna Green types. It's an interesting contrast, because the difference here is that New Zealand cricket doesn't massively have those options. You get the top White Ferns are all basically playing Big Bash, aren't they? Women's Big Bash, but you don't really have a weekend option. That's just a few weeks in the summer. You don't really have a weekend day, like a club situation where an up-and-coming player can work her way into the national team by starting off on a professional... No, you got to be in the New Zealand cricket team in order to get to that point. And yeah, I wonder if there is a lack of depth that's coming through because of that. If there is a situation where like players aren't... It's almost like a catch-22, like in order to be able to fund your full-time professional career, you've got to already be a full-time professional.
And so the idea of you've got the likes of Susie Bates, Sophie Devine, Amy Satterthwaite, Leah Tahuhu. They are the current White Ferns playing in both Women's Big Bash League and Super League in England. Amelia Kerr played in the last Super League over in England, and then you've got Rachel Priest and Sarah McGlashan, who are former White Ferns who are playing in the Women's Big Bash League. And Rachel Priest also plays in the Super League. But what we don't have, apart from Amelia Kerr, is other players working their way into those leagues. And yeah, granted, they only have X amount of overseas professional marquee type of playing spots, but that is reflective of the White Ferns team, because apart from Susie Bates, Sophie Devine, Amy Satterthwaite, and now Amelia Kerr, there's not much substance to that White Ferns team. And instead of other players getting better, making improvements, developing and working their way into those T20 leagues where there are greater opportunities for a career and to go full-time as a cricketer, those players are falling out of the White Ferns. Those players are proving to be not good enough for international cricket. And so now you've got someone like Katie Perkins, a veteran, former experienced White Fern, who came back into the White Ferns because she was performing in domestic cricket, and the younger players who had shown potential for the White Ferns were exposed at international level, so they fall out, and then the experienced player comes back in. So there's that second wave who could feature quite heavily in the T20 leagues where there's fantastic opportunities. They're just not good enough. Their playing is simply not good enough to play in the franchise-based T20 leagues. And yeah, any other points on that issue, Wildcard?
Well, the only thing to add would be, how do they get good enough? Like, how do we get a better second tier of players? Because that top tier is still pretty good, and when the Ferns were, winning a lot of games a couple years ago, it seemed to be largely on the back of, I remember when Amy Satterthwaite was scoring back-to-back-to-back centuries and Susie Bates was doing something special every game or two. It did seem to be a lot of relying on those top players, which I guess is normal for any team. You best players are the ones you want to get the best performances out of. That's why they're the best players. But how do you get that then? How do you build that up when we've already discussed that the domestic league has its flaws in terms of not only player development, but just players being able to play it in the first place when you're not exactly getting paid, basically, when it's a sacrifice to do so. How do you build up that next wave of talent?
Well, as you're correct, so the White Ferns' success was built on the performances of their very best players who are genuine world-class cricketers. But then women's cricket got better.
Yeah, right.
And so as the talent around the other teams got better, their ability to nullify the impact of Susie Bates, Sophie Devine and Amy Satterthwaite increased. Not only because the talent of their opposition got better, but because, they might have more video footage. They might have more statistics about those players. So the rise of women's cricket has nullified the impact of Susie Bates, Sophie Devine and Amy Satterthwaite, which is understandable. You can't rely on 3 players to carry an international team and be competitive on the international landscape. That's when you need the supporting role to play a supporting role, which they haven't done, and that's why the White Ferns have digressed, because opposition get better, they can nullify the big 3, and there's nothing else to the White Ferns team. How do you solve the problem? Well, I think it's the same for any sports organisation that is looking to invest in women's sport, you got to use the men's team that makes the money and invest that directly into women's sport, to the point where the women's sport league competition is at a point where it can start to make money itself. Like Elise Perry was on the Howie Games podcast, Howie Games out of Australia. Mark Howard, who does the cricket commentary for Channel 7, was on the Big Bash, and like he's a pretty cool guy. Elise Perry said that like her ultimate goal is that women's cricket, the Australian women's cricket team, or the Women's Big Bash League, women's cricket in Australia, gets to a point where it is self-sufficient. So they make the money for themselves, that they draw in the advertisers. They attract the sponsors. So they don't need to use the money from the men's team to be invested in the women's game. So that's the goal, is that women's cricket is self-sufficient. But to get there, you can't just say that women's cricket doesn't make money. Well, no, you use the money that you get from your big Indian broadcasting deals and selling out all these ODI and T20 venues. You use that money and you invest that money into women's cricket. And then women's cricket can work towards being self-sufficient. And to answer your question directly, you take that money and you build the profile of the women's 50 over T20 competitions. Like, you got to build it up. You got to keep investing more and more money. You got to offer some sort of professional element to domestic cricket for women in Aotearoa, so they can be part of the Players Association. So they do have rights. They can negotiate. Whereas at the moment they have nothing. That's where it's tricky. And that's where, like, just taking a little bit of money, investing it in the women's competition, get on live stream these women's games, these domestic games. Get eyes and ears on the women's game, build it up, and then invest more in development, skill development, winter training. There's no women's A tours. There's barely, I don't even know of any under 19 women's cricket travelling to another country. So many of these young girls who work their way into the White Ferns will not have played any cricket outside of Aotearoa before they play for the White Ferns. How can you expect any sort of success if that's the case?
Laying down the facts there, my son, laying down the facts. Speaking of building up the profile of domestic cricket, though, shall we talk some Plunket Shield?
Well, that's what we do at the Niche Cage. We build up these things that New Zealand cricket blatantly neglects. Like, New Zealand cricket should be paying us to talk about Plunket Shield cricket, to talk about the White Ferns, and keep it real, keep it honest. And keeping it real and honest, wildcard, about the Plunket Shield at the moment, I got to talk about Devon Conway.
Oh, let's do it.
Kind of have to go hard and fast through this Plunket Shield stuff because we still have Blackcaps and we are 20 minutes in to the Niche Cast. So we'll just wiggle our way through nice and quickly. Devon Conway leads all run scorers with 605 runs, average of 151 based on 4 not outs. But Devon Conway, I believe he was the leading Super Smash run scorer. He was in the top 5, maybe 4th for Ford Trophy runs. Prior to this round of Plunket Shield cricket, he was the leading run scorer in Plunket Shield cricket, and then he came out and hit a century not out for the Wellington Firebirds in their rain-affected game against Northern Districts. And that's basically paints a picture of Devon Conway being the best batsman in Aotearoa across all formats. And most importantly, when you're talking about different formats, you need to look at the strike rates. So when he's playing Super Smash cricket, he's scoring those runs with a strike rate that aligns with T20 cricket. And when he's playing Plunket Shield cricket, he's scoring these runs with a strike rate that aligns with Plunket Shield cricket, because the strike rate's 55. So he's not coming out whacking it guns blazing. He's taking his time like a pure batsman.
He's not Colin Munro.
He's not Colin Munro, no. Any thoughts on Devon Conway?
Yeah, how long till he's eligible for the Blackcaps?
can't be long now. He is a Kiwi African.
He is
He did
one of
play,
the stars of the Kiwi African 11.
He did play a significant number of first-class cricket games in South Africa prior to coming to New Zealand. And I think he had a first-class average of between 40 and 50 before he came to New Zealand. And he's only like 27 years old. So he's an absolute monster. But I don't know when he's going to be eligible, sorry. Dane Cleaver, second in Plunket Shield runs. Interesting bloke, considering no one talks about Dane Cleaver as one of the wicket-keeping prospects in Aotearoa. Dane Cleaver is the leading wicket-keeper batsman run scorer in Aotearoa, which is awfully notable. Awfully notable. Dane Cleaver out of Central Districts. He is ahead of Cameron Fletcher in Plunket Shield runs. Then you have Glenn Phillips and wildcard. I will finish my little Plunket Shield wrap for the batsman with a quick note about Mark Chapman and Glenn Phillips, because they are two batting prospects who we don't think of as Plunket Shield run scoring machines. Mark Chapman averaging 59. Well, they're both averaging 59.75. Mark Chapman has one less innings, and Glenn Phillips has one more not out than Mark Chapman. So both are averaging 59.75. Auckland Aces batting young guns. I'd assume that you'd think Mark Chapman and Glenn Phillips are just like T20 blasters, wouldn't you? Or ODI, run scorers.
Phillips for sure. Chappers has shown a little bit more in terms of that craft that it takes to bat in the longer form stuff. He did score a lovely 100 on the weekend, didn't he? So he's doing alright. I'm a little bit surprised that Phillips is keeping track, though. They must have the same amount of runs if they got the same average. Promising, isn't it? Because those two guys both got a little bit of an opportunity with the Blackcaps last summer and just haven't been seen as much since, because in fairness, they just didn't really take the opportunity as they got it. Tricky little 2020 innings, but still.
Yeah, but they're doing the job in Plunket Shield cricket, which is the hardest format.
Which is when it counts.
I'd suggest that their Blackcaps opportunities have been a bit weird. Like, they haven't been consistent in one role. Go out and do this over a long period of time and we'll help you out. They've been a bit like, go in for a T20 here and then, see you later.
Seems like something we've talked about before, Blackcap selections being a bit weird. Players given odd roles, inconsistent roles. I don't know, I'm getting deja vu.
Roger that, wildcard. We will segue into Blackcaps discussion and talking about weird selections, but I want to do so by referring to the Plunket Shield, because Todd Astle got selected into the Blackcaps Test squad wildcard, and the basis of my annoyance with this selection is that there was zero reason to change anything. Ajaz Patel was doing fine, and the discussion around who is the best spinner in Aotearoa, the best test spinning candidate for the Blackcaps, as someone who talks about cricket pretty much for a living, writes a whole lot about Blackcaps and domestic daily cricket, so any discussion around Kiwi cricketers is pretty interesting to me. The discussion around the best Kiwi spinner for the test team is the most uninteresting discussion possible, because they're all pretty much the same. They all have similar statistics. Or, if you want to say that Todd Astle's the best batsman, well, Ish Sodhi just played a test-saving knock last summer, and he just hit a nice little pretty much game-saving knock for Northern District's Knights in this round of Plunket Shield cricket. So that's just one example. Like, you can't say that any of these spinners are better batsmen than the other spinner, because they all have little nuances to their game that suggest that they are better batsmen than anyone gives them credit for. But generally, their work as spinners, as bowlers, which is why they should be selected in the first place, that role, their statistics are so similar across various formats, international or domestic. Their statistics are so similar that you just work yourself around in circles, and every spinner has a valid case to be the test spinner. So if every spinner has a valid case to be in that Blackcaps Test team, why would you change anything? Like, why has Ajaz Patel fallen out of favour after pretty much doing the job asked of him, and Todd Astle not doing anything crazy to warrant selection ahead of Ajaz Patel or ahead of Will Somerville? Because Will Somerville is the leading spinner in the Plunket Shield at the moment. And he's also got a fantastic record in first-class cricket in Australia, which is perhaps a bit harder than first-class cricket in Aotearoa. You catch my drift there, Wildcat?
I catch your drift 100%. I catch it so well that I'll probably be selected as the next spinner for the Blackcaps on the basis of my fielding. It's sort of like listening to hearing people debate who they think the best spinner is sort of like listening to Americans talk about politics, because it's not saying anything about policy or the politics itself, just as you're not really saying anything about the spinners themselves. You're really just making your own predetermined arguments, because the fact is every single one of the 4 or 5 candidates right now for the test spinner spot, every single one of them has one aspect that just stands out, so you can make a case for any single one of them. Because Will Somerville got the best average, Ajaz Patel gets the best bulk of wickets, Ish Sodhi, best upside in terms of like best bowling in an innings. Mitch Santner, he was the incumbent beforehand. He only lost his spot because he was injured. And Todd Astle has the best, like the longest, most sustained consistency in first-class cricket. So every single one of them you can make an argument for, which means that making an argument for any single one of them is pretty pointless, really.
It is rather pointless. Who would you have wanted to be the spinner for this first test against Bangladesh?
I'd have just kept things simple and stuck with Ajaz Patel. It was only a couple tests ago that he bowled New Zealand to a very famous victory in the UAE, and I just don't see... I mean, I understand that he didn't have the best series against Sri Lanka, but he also didn't have the best series because it just wasn't a massively useful series for spinners in general. And I mean, if you're picking for New Zealand conditions, he's the guy who's getting the most wickets. I guess he also bowls the most overs every season, but he gets the most wickets every season as well in New Zealand conditions in the Plunket Shield. Didn't really see the need for change, but hey, what do you know? It feels like a bit of Guptill syndrome again. Because you said earlier, what's changed since between this series and the previous Test series? What's changed is that Todd Astle has been squeezed into a couple of ODI squads, and it sort of feels like they've picked him as an extension of that, rather than in relation to the previous Test squad, which should be kept separate to the previous ODI squad and previous T20 squad. I say this all the time, but there's just so much like muddling of the lines between the three formats, which just I can't be convinced that that's the most effective way to pick teams for sustained success in either of those in any of those three formats.
Yeah, weird. If anything, this first test is at Anderson Paak.
Yeah, where they often pick a second spinner.
Let alone that being Mitchell Santner and Ish Sodhi's home ground.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's a weird one, and like, so
I understand why Santner's not there though, because he just needs to play some Plunket Shield and get the overs, and he hasn't played. Like, he came back during the limited overs thing from injury during the limited overs stretch of the season, so he just doesn't have the overs in his arm yet. But I mean, even still,
a series against Bangladesh in New Zealand is the perfect chance to get him back in.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's an interesting idea. You raised the idea to me after Will Somerville made his debut. You believe that Will Somerville may not play another test for New Zealand?
I say he will not ever play another test for New Zealand.
So
if we're going overs and unders again, overs and unders of 0.5 deliveries bowled by Will Somerville in Test cricket from this day forwards, I'm taking the under.
That's funny. Shout out Will Somerville, one Test wonder.
He should play another game. I just don't see how he's going to, because there's too much of a queue in front of him, and the way he got it was just too fortuitous in the first place. Like, everyone was injured or dropped at the time, and they were picking the second spinner. And he's 34.
The 0.5 figure's a bit rough, but Mitchell Santner's future as a Test spinner. How are you viewing that right now?
Yeah, well, I looked up their averages when the Test squad was announced, and Mitchell Santner's first-class average is atrocious. It's like 47 or something, which is actually considerably worse than his Test average, and that just goes to show that he was picked to play Test cricket earlier than he was perhaps ready, and maybe should have played a few more years just in the ODI squad, establishing himself well as he did there, and just got in the same. Tell you what, the same thing happened to Ish Sodhi as well. Picked too early for the Test squad and just hasn't had like a sustained full season of Plunket Shield. Whereas Todd Astle and Ajaz Patel had several years of that, and I think they've each had shown the benefits of that in terms of how well, I don't want to say how comfortably they settled into Test cricket, because Todd Astle just hasn't done that yet. He hasn't had the chance. He's played a couple tests and has done nothing. And Ajaz Patel settled in nicely, but yeah, again, only in a couple tests. Santner's just, I don't know. The fact that he's got a better Test average than first class average is maybe a red herring for the reason I just said, but I do think, again, you got to divorce his ODI status from his Test status and say that he probably doesn't deserve to be just like, it's not that he doesn't deserve to be picked, he doesn't deserve to be picked as a like unanimous first choice. And once again, I can't help but feel it's the fact that his batting is what keeps him ahead of others rather than his bowling, which is what he's supposed to be in the team to do. And I think if I can think of a reason of logical potential that they might have come to in order for deciding they needed to change the spinner for this series, I can only assume it's because Santner's not available and therefore they want Todd Astle because they think they can bat him at 7. Which again, priorities in the wrong place, but so I think that's because of the thing. I think that's going to keep Mitch Santner in and around the conversation in the immediate short term. Short term, we're not playing another Test for ages, but when they do, I think he's not going to be like, I don't think he's going to be held too accountable for struggling a little bit with the ball. I expect he'll probably be straight back in, to be honest. But yeah, I don't think he should be as comfortable as perhaps the selectors would suggest if you happen to corner one in a dark room. Mr. Larson, careful, son.
We're both recording in just ruthless locations without any Wi-Fi, so we can't check this, but it'll be interesting if you could get Mitchell Santner's total number of Test overs. Maybe we can include this in the notes just to reference too, because I feel like the line for Mitchell Santner's overs bowled in Test cricket from this point forward, I'm going to put it at like 35-ish. And I'm going to take the under. I don't think Mitchell Santner bowls more than 35 overs. No, I'm going to say he does, because at some point we're going to see Mitchell Santner and Ish Sodhi just playing Test cricket alongside each other consistently for a long time. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. I think they're the two bowlers that have the most... potential's a rough word, because they're both guys in their mid-20s who have been around long enough so that we know the kind of bowlers that they are. I think they're the two guys with the most upside. I'll say that. I think Astle and Ajaz are both kind of steady hands who'll give you 60% every single time. Mitchell Santner probably needs to get to, he's probably at a point where he's giving you 40% in tests, but if he can get to a point where he's 70 or 80, then sweet as, when you put him alongside Sodi, who can give you 95% or 30%, and that, when you have another option, I know people get scared off by that 30%. I love that. I love the fact that you've got someone who can just be X factor. I think that's crucial in terms of winning tests. So those two, I still think those two could be a brilliant test cricket combination. It's just we got to get to the point, first of all, where a New Zealand cricket team isn't afraid to pick two spinners on a regular basis.
Like, it's so mind-boggling to me, because we could have had like 3 years of Mitchell Santner and Sodi playing test cricket alongside each other, and we could be looking at a future where they have like figured out test cricket, they've figured out how to use each other in the same team, with we as a collective Kiwi cricketing public have figured out how to view them as a duo, like Mitchell Santner dotting an end up, Sodi the weapon, Mitchell Santner offering a bit more all-round ability, and then Sodi as your straight up and down spinner. Like, we could have been 3 or 4 years down that journey as of right now.
Are they both going to be playing Plunket Shield this weekend? Because I'm pretty sure this is the week that Northern Districts are playing at Whangarei. I might pop down and catch a session.
Mitchell Santner didn't play the last game, I don't think, so who knows?
No, but that was sort of overlapping with the end of the Blackcaps. Although, was he? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. We'll see.
Yeah, but compare that wonderful... Is it a utopia?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, compare that utopia, or my personal utopia, of us being a couple years into the Mitchell Santner Sodi spin duo test cricket utopia thing. Instead of that, we are at a point right now where we have no idea who the test spinner is. We've got literally have no clue who the best test spinner is. The last guy who did a fine job, he's out. Now we've got a guy who could be okay, but has no real long-term future as the test spinner. And we've got like 4 or 5 candidates who are just all over the show.
Yeah. I have a sneaky suspicion what's going to happen is the Blackcaps are going to win the toss, bowl first. Trent Bolt's going to have 3 wickets by lunch, and it's not going to matter who the spinner is. And that's just going to, again, leave the situation back where we started, where it's just like your own personal opinion, whether or not whether or not like Todd Astle, who's probably going to take another like 2 for 40 or something with the 9th and 10th wicket, like he did against England that time in the day-night test. It was a nice contribution. Like, it's a good memory of Todd Astle in test cricket, but it's also perhaps not as revealing as it might be.
Any other
Blackcaps
Test thoughts, wildcard? Because other than that, it's pretty boring, really.
Is there any pressure on the openers?
Zero
pressure? Jeet Raval still hasn't got a Test 100? Maybe you'll tick that box this series.
I have zero interest in superficial art, like just numbers like that. Success for Jeet Raval is not scoring centuries.
It's given Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor a platform to come in and they can score the centuries.
Centuries are centuries. It's just a kind of somewhat meaningless number that you get to. It's a nice round number you get to, and everyone goes, "Yeah, you made a century."
Yeah, it's a milestone.
But
I suppose getting out for 100 isn't really any better than getting 99 not out in terms of the actual contribution to the result of the match. Sure.
Yeah. So the better situation is Jeet Raval setting up the innings for Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor to work their magic and put the Blackcaps in the strongest possible position to win a Test match.
I'd like to see BJ Watling get some runs.
He got 77 for the Knights in the last outing.
Good lad. He's shown a bit of touch then. He's had a couple years where he hasn't been on that sort of tear that he was in the McCullum days, where he was just always picking up, either saving an innings from collapse or just absolutely piling the runs on to help someone else get a big score, just being a great teammate. He's had a few of those innings to an extent, but they've been like 30 off 100 ball type innings rather than ones where he's just cashed in. I think he's overdue a nice large number, and ideally in red ink next to his name.
Here's a wild thing to say to finish with Wildcard.
Oh, I love it.
I don't think we're too far off the point where BJ Watling is not the best wicket-keeper batsman at the Northern Districts Knights.
This wouldn't be a Tim Seifert conversation, would it be?
It's definitely a Tim Seifert conversation, and when you think about it, it's kind of crazy. The Blackcaps Test wicket-keeper batsman, I don't think we're too far off him being overtaken by his understudy at the Northern Districts Knights, Tim Seifert.
Well, there's one to simmer on, isn't there?
Bloody oath.
Bloody oath.
What, any other thoughts that you want to try and compete with that, just sizzling burner of a take? The steak is well cooked on that one. Any just thoughts, ideas, non-Blackcaps related?
Oh, I don't know anything that's particularly hounding upon my chest at the moment that I need to get rid of. I watched the Freddie Mercury movie the other night. Wasn't great. Didn't realise they gave out Oscars for lip syncing, but fair enough. Fun though, fun film.
Wait, like people still actually care about Oscars and shit like that?
Unbelievably they do. I was writing, was doing the Premiere Files on Monday, so I didn't watch any of the Oscars, but I did have Twitter open, so I was getting some sizzling takes over there as well, and yeah, nah. I don't really understand why people think that an academy based of like grumpy old bastards is gonna come up with like is gonna best appreciate like the finest cinematic art of the year. It's just a populism thing, so I don't know why people would get fussed about it, but apparently they do. It's like there's nothing dumber than the Grammys. The Grammys is the absolute worst of all of those like award show type things. Nothing is stupider than the Grammys. Even their categories are stupid, let alone who wins them. And then I listened to Mark Maron a couple weeks ago, his podcast where he had Anderson Paak on. And Anderson Paak, real interesting dude, like fun, funky fella. But he was talking about like growing up thinking, man, I just want to win a Grammy. And I'm like, well, right, that's why your last album was trash then, wasn't it? Because you got your priorities slightly wrong. And I expect his next one will be great because he'll like make a response to that. And his previous one before that was like 10 out of 10 outstanding. Or maybe 9 out of 10 because it was a bit long, Malibu. But, that's an album that he made as the underdog. And it was a great album. Then he made an album like working with Dr. Dre, working as like whatever the opposite of an overdog. Is it an overdog? Underdog? Whatever the opposite is. And it wasn't very good, except for that one song with the Kendrick feature, which was like top notch, and it was the first single, so I thought it was going to be in a great album following on, but nah, wasn't quite there, Doc. Wasn't quite there. Did you listen to that one?
Yeah, I thought it was alright. I don't think it was.
That's the thing. It was alright, but it should have been special.
I think it was just different. Like the whole idea was different. It was going back to Oxnard more. And going back to Oxnard with Dr. Dre in your camp is going to be a very different sound. But that gives reason to expect something also very different on the back of Oxnard because...
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting a proven track record with Anderson Paak that every album is going to be very different and there's going to be different sounds incorporated. And I think this was just a detour as opposed to, a misstep.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with that.
Righty, mate.
If you're listening, Andy, next one, we're lining up.
I was just thinking because I've seen the thumbnails for Andrew Fantano's video of the beef with Anderson Paak.
Is there one? I didn't know that.
I haven't watched the videos, but there's something there. So I was just thinking, you're not quite on Fantano's level just yet, so you might want to just chill out.
That's how we got to end the podcast, eh? What's his little rap at the end of it?
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember how it goes now. It was like, if you like the album, then have a listen, blah blah blah, subscribe and the cool. I forget how it goes.
Oh, my
Nishcast forever.
My mind just went straight to Nardwire.
Yeah, that's much better. Doot.
So yeah, thank you for listening to the Nishcast, and we'll be back in the coming days with a different Kiwi sporting topic to talk about and enjoy and digest. On behalf of the Wildcard and the Nishcast.
Yep.
Fuck off.
Doot.